Let's do it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I am Lee Camp. How you doing out there today? We are going to get into the quiet, semi-quiet, compared to just shutting down the agency, the semi-quiet gutting of the Social Security Agency. We'll get into a little bit of the Department of Education as well, and I'll be getting into Israel's endgame. Some revelations about their end game and some just very well analyzed. Some of the excellent analysis, to phrase that in a way that is slightly more grammaticological. Excellent analysis by Chris Hedges in one of his recent columns, and so much more. All that's coming up right now. I hope you will click thumbs up, click subscribe, click all those things, leave a comment. Howdy to everyone. I'm hanging in there. If at some point I can't put my words in the right structure sentence, then one of the reasons that could be the thing that causes the thing is I just got done with about an hour and a half of dental work, so I'm a little out of it. But here's the thing: in our world, the world we're in, with a waning empire, collapsing capitalism, capitalist dystopia, a lot of painful dental work is kind of like it's like a vacation. It's like it's just, I can just focus on the stabbing pain in my face rather than have to sit here with the stabbing pain of general reality. But let's get into this. And even the Wall Street Journal, this is how you know things are insane. The Wall Street Journal is a far, far right-wing piece of garbage. Even they have an article today about essentially the gutting of Social Security. They're phrasing it in a slightly nicer way. But even they say dealing with Social Security is headed from bad to worse. Dealing with it is just, it's not as good as it used to be. Have you noticed that, folks? Have you noticed it's a little more difficult to use your Social Security? Even Wall Street Journal saying that, some things are going on. But it's not that dealing with it is getting slightly from bad to worse. This is the kind of slow and backdoor gutting of Social Security, of the safety net, of anything and everything that could help your average human being in this country. This is the gravity of capitalism, but it seems to be ramping up much quicker. And here are some of the details of what's going on right now. So Donald Trump, or President Mump, the President Musk-Trump alliance of psychopaths, they're not allowed to just shut down Social Security. Also, I think they're slightly afraid of how that would look. So instead, they run around going, and I did a segment on this as well, we're fixing Social Security. We're getting rid of the fraud. I did a long segment on how, no, there is very little fraud in Social Security, and yet they're using that to basically gut it. But so they can't just shut it down, not without an act of Congress. And even though this is a Republican Congress, it is very unlikely that you'd get the votes to shut down Social Security. So instead, what they're doing is doing as much as they can to make things as difficult as possible so that as many people across this country will have difficulty getting Social Security, will give up trying to get Social Security, will never be able to figure out the process to get Social Security. Basically, just making it as difficult as possible. Picture your health insurance providers. That's what they're trying to turn it into. When you get a procedure in the hospital, right, they've made it nearly impossible to actually get the money you're owed or get the reimbursement you're owed from the health insurance companies. And that's by design. This is kind of a similar version to where you call your health insurance provider. For everybody in other countries, you can just ignore this part and just know that America sucks. America's a fucking cesspool. You can just, but yeah, we have things called health insurance, and you sit online and they give you a phone number to call, and you call it, and there's some bad scratchy music. There's no reason that the music should be scratchy anymore. All right. It's fucking 2025. You're telling me you're incapable of recording a audio message for us to listen to while we're on hold for 7.5 hours that isn't. They leave it they leave it scratchy on purpose because they want you to hang up. The goal is to get as many of you to hang up as they can. And they succeed a certain percentage of the time. Let's say it's 15% of the time. Let's say it's 25. Whatever it is, good for them. You hang up, you give up. You will not ultimately win that fight against them. In many ways, they're just hoping you'll stop. For older people who are trying to navigate it themselves, a lot of them just never figure it out, which is also part of the goal. So they're trying to make Social Security basically similar to that. It's so difficult to navigate and figure out. And if you don't have a young person who's willing, for a 90-year-old, it's 70. That's what they mean by young people. If you don't have a young person, a 70-year-old or under, who's willing to sit on the phone for 6 hours for you to try and figure all this out, then you're just out on the streets or whatever. You don't get your Social Security. Here are the changes they're doing. Among these changes, this is from NPR. Among these changes are plans to cut thousands of jobs, close offices, and enact new policy, including more stringent identity checks that could require in-person office visits. So this is one of the things, is they're requiring more and more in-person visits to prove your identity. Well, picture in a country all the types of people. Who are the ones who probably have the toughest time getting to an in-person identity check? Probably really old, disabled people are probably the number one type of person that's going to have trouble getting to this in-person check. So Donald Trump and Elon Musk are trying to make sure that the 90-year-old with no legs, like zero legs, like just vacant air under their knees, will have to arrive in person. They don't have a driver's license anymore. They haven't had a car in 10 years. Will arrive in person at a Social Security office, that they're also decreasing the number of those. So maybe instead of being 15 minutes away, it's 2 hours away. Let's see how that person does. Let's see. This is literally like taking elderly with no legs and saying, can you please jump through hoops? Please, with your leg and a half, jump through these hoops. That's the level of sociopathy we're talking about with these criminals. That's the level. Is just, let's find a 90-year-old who's in a wheelchair and tell them they need to jump through hoops. Advocates warn these sweeping moves could lead. I love how soft all this stuff is, isn't it? Isn't it so nice? It could lead to seniors and people with disabilities having a harder time getting help with their crucial benefits. This is another problem I have with our neoliberal garbage media, is even when they're covering something correctly. I mean, at this moment, NPR is correctly discussing the fact that there are changes to Social Security. Okay, fine. They're not lying. They're not creating a story that's not there. This, like when they did attack pieces on me, those were made up. This is actual legitimate thing. But even then, they can't tell the full truth. The full truth is it's not could lead to difficulty. It's by fucking design. It's by design difficulty. This is a design of difficulty. This is absolute sociopaths trying to figure out how to make sure 95-year-olds can't get a couple of dollars. Like, just call it what it is. Just speak the truth, you freaking. I think I'm reaching the limits of the amount I can cut out my own curse words. Advocates warn the sweeping moves could cause difficulty for people who are disabled. Already getting assistance can be burdensome. You don't say. My first phone call. So this is a quote from someone named Aaron Woods, who's been trying to help his mother get her Social Security. He says, my first phone call that I made to Social Security, I was on hold for 3 hours and 15 minutes before I spoke to somebody. So this means this woman who can't get her Social Security had to have a younger person who also has time during their weekday to sit on hold for 3.5 hours. I don't know how many people in this country have those people around. He says it was a weird case because they didn't understand my mom wasn't getting her Social Security. Was it a weird case? Or is this, again, pretty much by design? Woods, oh, I should mention as I continue to go, I do not frown upon super chats. Super chats are welcome here. And in fact, I often spend time to address said super chats. That's the reward you get for supporting the show. He said it was a weird case. Woods said he figured out there was a problem with her bank account that started last summer. Those problems led to her not getting her Social Security checks, which created a lapse in her Medicare prescription benefits because she paid for them with her Social Security. Okay, so we're seeing a bit of a spiral here, a dominoes, a snowballing effect, a fourth analogy where one thing gets screwed up and then it goes a chain of events. Well, guess what? This chain of events led to her ending up in the hospital. She didn't get her Social Security, which led to a lapse in her Medicaid prescription benefits, which led to her not getting her medication, which led to, quote, my mom was hospitalized with stroke-like symptoms. It turned out it was just a really bad case of really high blood sugar, and she was hospitalized because she didn't have access to her prescriptions. So, didn't get Social Security, lost her Medicare prescription, didn't get her pills, ended up in the hospital with stroke-like symptoms. Excellent. And this is, again, what President Mump wants to do to people. This is where they want them to be. President Mump he's just the face. He's the ghoulish, disgusting face of this absolutely untethered sociopathy that if it weren't him, it'd be another one. It doesn't matter that it's that one, that it's that orange face. It would just be another one. Like this is where we have a system that puts sociopaths at the top. We need a sociopath test for all our leaders yesterday. Put sociopaths at the top. Uniquely, they are the ones that are best at rising the ladder, at going up this ladder because they are willing to step on anyone and everyone. If you look at Elon Musk's success to becoming the richest person in the world, it had a lot to do with either stealing ideas, buying ideas, stepping on others, kicking other people out, having more workers injured at Tesla factories than all the other automakers combined, all the top automakers combined. He rose to that level by stepping on others because he is a bigger sociopath than others. And those are the type of people that are going to win at this game. He's starting to see how it works. He's starting to see the rules of the game. You just got to read inside the box. It's right inside there. Just take the lid of the box off. Just read the outside. That's all you got to do. So then they continue to explain why there's been such difficulty at these Social Security places. There simply have not been enough workers to administer the benefits timely. So this is what I mean about quietly gutting Social Security. If you fire enough Social Security people, they can't handle the benefits, then people who have trouble don't get their benefits. Well, all of a sudden, 10% of everybody who's supposed to get Social Security isn't getting it. Well, that's great. More people you cut off Social Security, more savings. But of course, they don't really care about savings. They care about gutting Social Security to the point that it collapses, but appears to not be their fault as much. And then they can go, okay, we have to privatize this. Well, what do you do when you privatize it? You enrich a tiny group of people, which is the people they want to enrich. And we've seen this. You see this in other countries. You see it in Argentina. You see it in other places where they gut certain things to make them collapse, to privatize them, and then the ruling elite get richer and richer and richer. This has been done in many countries usually after a US-backed coup of some sort. And so that's what they're doing here. And they're trying to do it right with education as well. Actually, I'm going to talk for a moment about education in a couple of minutes. Then this person continues to make sure the mistakes aren't made. And to to make sure that mistakes aren't made. Oh, there simply aren't enough people to make sure that mistakes aren't made. And then when people get disconnected from the Social Security, whether it's for financial reasons or for mistakes, there's not enough people to allow recipients to get reconnected easily. One of the ways to make sure that Americans don't get benefits they are entitled to by being American is to make it really hard for them to get the things they're entitled to. Huh? Problem solving could get harder as the agency plans to cut 7,000 jobs, though its current staffing of about 57,000 is already at a 50-year low. So that's a key sentence there. Because why is Social Security, this is before Trump got into office, why was Social Security already at a 50-year low of staffing? Because Biden was not helping facilitate Social Security. He wasn't helping it go quickly. He was just not cutting it quite as quickly. What Trump and what President Mump represents is the speeding up of all of this, the speeding up of deportation, the speeding up of the gutting of public education, the speeding up of gutting of transportation, infrastructure, whatever you want. It's just a speeding up of it. It is not the beginning of it. Social Security was already at a 50-year low of staffing, despite the fact that there are more people on Social Security in this country than there have ever been. So you get more people on it and you staff it less. And that was before Trump got into office. And now they're going to cut 7,000 more jobs. Social Security leaders maintain that their reorganization plans will have a positive effect on the delivery of services. There's two reasons this is so stupid. Oh, we're going to help Social Security by firing 7,000 people. We're going to make it more efficient. All that garbage. There's two reasons it's insane. One is just because it's insane. You can't make it. Let's make people get their services quicker by cutting more employees from an agency that already couldn't handle the workload. It doesn't make any sense on its face. But here's the second reason, which probably doesn't get discussed enough. What in your right mind makes you think that whoever Trump puts in to head Social Security, I'll talk about him in a second. Whoever Trump puts in to head Social Security, whoever he puts in to head the Treasury, whoever he puts in to head the agriculture, any of these things, wants to help you, wants to help average American. At what point did they give you the idea that that was their goal? These sociopaths. Like, look at Trump's entire life. At what moment in his life did you go, wow, that guy's really out for others? Like, at what point? It is totally against, or Elon Musk, it is totally against anything they've ever done in their lives to be out to help others. So, like, you would have to have some sort of resume, that's some sort of past history of helping others. That does not exist in Trump's life. It does not exist in Elon Musk's life. It does not exist in almost any of these goons' lives. And in the rare case you can find one, it usually is because they knew they were going to play this game where they needed to look like they were helping people. So they, worked at a soup kitchen for a month once when they were 18 years old. Like, really, when Donald Trump says, we really just want those people to get their Social Security, and this is how we're going to do it, by firing half of the Social Security agency. Like, what made you think that he was out to help people? It'd be so insane. It'd be so naive and idiotic. That's the thing for all these people. That's another thing for all these people that are just Trump bootlicking, all the Trump bootlickers, all the tongue up the ass of President Mump, all of them. What made you think this man is out to help you or anyone in America who doesn't have $1 billion? Like seriously, there are occasional moments where I say Trump did something that I support, such as defunding USAID, but it's not for the reasons he did it. The reasons he did it is because USAID is a semi-neoliberal organization that did some things that he didn't like they were funding a journalist that went after J.D. Vance and probably funding a journalist that went after Donald Trump, whatever his actual reasons are for defunding them. The reason I support it is for the absolute opposite reasons that he did it. So anyway, let's keep going here. The agency has announced it will undergo a massive restructuring by eliminating 6 out of its 10 regional offices. So basically, if we eliminate a lot of the regional offices, we make it more and more difficult for people to get to these places in person. And by doing that, we also require more people show up in person in order to prove their identity because of this. Just loads of Social Security fraud. Oh my God, the millions of people across this country collecting their dead mother's Social Security. Oh, wait, what's that? It's 13? Oh, I had heard it was million. Oh, it's 13. It's 13 million, you mean? No, it's just 13. There are 13 people. They think they may have found 13 people of the hundreds of millions on Social Security, if you include dead people not receiving Social Security, dead people that were once alive and did not, receive their Social Security while alive, and then once unalived, they stopped receiving Social Security. We're talking hundreds of millions. If you count all those, and they found 13 instances of actual fraud. Social Security spokesperson said the agency is identifying efficiencies and reducing costs with renewed focus on mission critical work for the American people. Okay, that sounds like it was written by an AI, but not just any AI, like an AI douchebag, like artificial intelligence, like an arsehole artificial intelligence that like. It's not just AI. That's an AI absolute dipshit. We've got a renewed focus on our mission critical. These steps prioritize this. Again, this is still the Social Security spokesperson. These steps prioritize customer service by decreasing the amount of places that they can actually show up and get customer service. We're facilitating customer service by making there be no more customers. We're facilitating it by having half as many regional offices, and we're putting them in hidden places. We're putting them actually behind the edible arrangements in the strip mall and inside the Radio Shack. And the sign still says Radio Shack, even though Radio Shack went bankrupt 10 years ago. We put it in there, but it's actually behind a fake wall. You know what? Just don't even worry about it. You're not going to find it. Just don't even try. Mission critical. Oh, shut your stupid AI face hole with your, we're getting rid of non-mission critical. We're talking about old people getting their goddamn checks. We're not talking about NASA. All these things are huge and create all sorts of questions. Okay, so I skipped ahead. This is no longer a quote from Social Security spokesperson, troll ass, artificial arsehole. This is now former president of advocacy group. Okay. Says all of these things are huge, meaning all the changes being added to Social Security recently are huge and create all sorts of questions. And at this point, no one knows what's going on. Do you think that's by design? The no one knows what's going on. Thank you, Larry, for supporting the show. I think you're the first one to support the show in this episode. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Larry. So they make all, that's another thing, is like one way is you de-staff it, so you make it so that people can't handle the workload. Another, why not just leave one guy? Trump? President Mump? Why not leave one nice old lady trying to deal with 100 million people? Why don't you do that? But of course, nobody knows what's going on. It's just utterly confusing. They're just gutting employees. Obviously, the employees, when they're cut out of the blue, they don't have time to train anyone for the things the new tasks they're taking over, because 7,000 people were just cut. It's all meant to be fucking chaos. And when you create chaos, then they can point to it 6 months from now and go, look, Social Security doesn't work. It's even worse than we thought. Nobody's getting their checks. And then they can privatize it. The slew of recent changes have been announced by the agency's acting commissioner, Leland Dudek. Actually, sometimes jokingly. So this person's name actually is Leland. Sometimes jokingly, people ask me what my name is short for, Lee. And I'll say, oh, Leland. It's not at all. It's Lee is short for nothing. So this is the acting commissioner, Leland Dudek, and it says Dudek's most controversial recent step has been in the announcement that by the end of the month, Social Security Agency is changing identity verification rules. The new guidelines will require beneficiaries to travel in person in their wheelchairs, and they're not allowed to get a ride either. Not allowed to use Uber, Lyft, bus, nothing. You got to push yourself there in your wheelchair, 72 miles to the only remaining Social Security office. To travel in person to the Social Security office for both benefit claims and direct deposit changes if they're unable to use the online verification system. For far too long, the agency has, this is a great quote. He's literally requiring people show up in person. And his quote is, for far too long, the agency has used antiquated methods for proving identity. You know the most antiquated method? Show up in person. There's no need with the technology we have now. Sure, back when we were using fucking smoke signals and carrier pigeons, yeah, you kind of had to prove yourself in person. Nowadays, with Zoom calls and you can email a photo of your ID and your passport to a person, that like the idea that you legit have to be there in person is just garbage. Not to mention, if they really wanted to do it in a caring way, they let the person sign up online with, a Zoom call check that that's the person and a photo ID and all that stuff online. And then if they really want to go check, they show up there on their own time. Social Security investigators can show up at their goddamn house on their own time rather than forcing the 95-year-old in the wheelchair to get her sweet ass down to the only remaining office. So this Leland Dudek guy, here's how he got this job. So he was formerly the head of Social Security's Office of Program Integrity. So he basically was the Social Security investigator to hunt people down for fraud. He was described by the Washington Post as an IT expert with a zeal for eliminating fraud. So he's basically the narc of the he's the douchebag cop of the Social Security Agency. And then during the first few weeks of the second Trump administration, he was put on administrative leave after he broke the agency chain of command to cooperate with DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. Basically, DOGE came into the office. They said, give us everything you've got, which is illegal. And whilst other higher ups in the Social Security Agency said, we're not doing that, which is what they should have done. This troll came running out from behind a curtain and said, I'll show you everything. Here, this way. Oh, sure, why not? Does anybody have an ass that needs licking, Mr. Doge? Mr. Musk, I see you've scuffed your boots there. May I lick that clean for you, sir? He was suspected of violating agency protocols and ethical standards for this conduct. Social Security's internal counsel suspected that Dudek had violated the strict enforcement disclosure laws Social Security uses to protect individuals' information. So Social Security has some strict privacy rules because they basically have your entire life that they have that information. And so they have strict privacy rules. And he just violated them all and gave them to Elon Musk and his goon squad. Dudek assisted DOGE in gaining unprecedented access to the Social Security Agency's data in direct violation of at least 3 of their security pillars that the employees are bound by. The suit alleges Dudek allowed DOGE employees to access sensitive data without proper justification, access data from remote locations, and examine the data in front of non-Social Security personnel. This broad government intrusion into citizen privacy is unprecedented. So he was given a promotion. This guy ran around saying, I would like to break every law we've got on privacy to help you out, Mr. Musk. And Social Security Agency put him on leave, and Trump then promoted him as acting head. So this, like, basically, he proved himself. He's that guy who's trying to join the mafia, and they're like, I don't know if we want this squirmy fella in our mafia family. And then they're like, okay, if you go whack this guy, you'll prove yourself, and I guess we'll make you a member. And so he's like, absolutely, sir. I'll go whack him. And so he ran and whacked to the Social Security Agency, and they were like, okay, you've proved yourself. Now you can run the thing. Dudek admitted that Doge is calling most of the shots at the Social Security Administration, admitting that decisions are made without my input and I have to effectuate those decisions because I have no choice, much like a Nazi guard. Look, not my call. I just do the thing. So he's a pathetic sack of garbage, as you would expect. That's how people get these jobs. It's how people get promoted in this world of sociopathy. And yeah, so they're doing everything they can to essentially gut Social Security without actually just shutting it down, because they want to be able to run around with their propaganda and say, we're fixing it. Well, look at all the fixing we're doing. We're doing so much fixing. So here we stand with President Mump trying to make sure that your grandparents are unable to afford the most basic thing. I mean, these are relatively small amounts of money that are going to each person compared to the Elon Musk of the world, but compared to most of like the top 20% of Americans. This is not grand amounts of money. Furthermore, these people have worked their entire lives, almost all of them, in this society. And yes, if you're a mother raising a child, that's work too, even if the government doesn't pay you for it. They've worked their entire lives in this society so that we can now try and make sure they don't get the money they're entitled to. Entitlements. They're entitled to that money because they legit have been a productive member of this society for 80 years or whatever. Like, it's just so, these people are so fucking repulsive. Okay, I want to get to, oh my God, I have so much more. We're going to do a quick thing on Department of Education, the Trump shutting down the Department of Education. But please, everybody, hit like, hit subscribe. When you hit subscribe, by the way, if you're already subscribed, you should check that you're subscribed, because they will unsubscribe people. They will also change your bell setting, because when you hit subscribe, you have to hit a bell icon to actually get alerts. So right now, if you're watching on YouTube, do that. Make sure it says subscribe, and then click on that and see which of the bell settings you have, because there's now 3, I think. One is like never get alerted. One's maybe, sometimes, who knows? And then the third one is I want all the alerts for these. Hopefully you'll put it on all of the alerts. Apartment 2D, thanks for the super chat. They're asking who should play Dudek in the movie. When everyone acts horrified about this shit show in the future. Good question. I'll leave it to the chatters to throw in some ideas. If you haven't caught episode 5 of Unredacted tonight, I highly recommend it. So that's at the top of linktree.com/Lee Camp. If you want the audio podcast version of Unredacted tonight, that is also at linktree.com/Lee Camp, but it is the Just Comedy podcast. Just Comedy. Look it up. Please give it a rating while you're there. Okay. Before we get to Israel and Israel's endgame, what happens if the Department of Education is eliminated? So I was wondering this because Trump's moving to eliminate the Department of Education. He's basically gutting it to the point of oblivion. And it's because I've never lived in a time without the Department of Education. It's easy to think, oh my God, does that mean every school shuts down? Well, no, it does mean some bad things, but it does not mean that there is zero school. The department, so here's what it does. The department must ensure that students with disabilities can learn and thrive alongside their peers, that educational equity is upheld for children of all races, that religious freedom is protected, and that protecting against sex-based discrimination, including against LGBTQ students, remains a priority in schools nationwide. So basically, getting rid of the Department of Education does not mean schools stop operating. It just means they get a whole lot more biggity. Biggity, biggity, biggity. They like this is literally Trump and his goons, President Mump saying, "Can we make racism great again?" Because there's been people. It's not just racism, obviously. It's being a bigot in a multitude of ways. But there's been people saying that a disabled kid should get an education. What? Why? They've also been saying that a gay kid shouldn't be, beat up on the bus. We need to make sure that those type of things change immediately. It's really just a way to allow more racism in the states. They can have more inequality. They can not have accessibility ramps, because who wants the kid in the wheelchair to be able to get an education? We know people in wheelchairs are not human. I mean, come on now. Please, convince me otherwise. So the Department of Education, by the way, did not exist at this level until 1980. The Department of Education originated in 1980. So basically, there was education in America prior to 1980. There was, schooling. There was public schooling. All of that existed prior to 1980. It's just that there wasn't a department that actually studied and tried to fix racism, bigotry, discrimination of a variety of kinds. And that is one of the biggest things that the Department of Education does. Another thing it does is it actually finds out the data about a lot of these things. So, for example, if you find out a certain state is giving more money to the schools that are predominantly white than the schools that are predominantly black, that's a significant thing to know, and then take steps to remedy that. But if you don't have that data, then no one can claim that, right? And it's a great thing. It's funny. You think data sounds nerdy, but if you don't know, if no one did the research to find out that, hey, black kids are way underfunded in their schools, and the ones that have more black kids, we just have a lot less funding there. And by the way, even right now, prior to the Department of Education getting shut down, that is a fact in the United States, that predominantly black schools are less funded than predominantly white schools. Why do we know that information? Because of data from the Department of Education. So if you cut the data out, then we don't have to worry about people saying we're racist, because who knows what's going on. So these are the type of things that Department of Education does. And these are the reasons that cutting the Department of Education has been a goal of Republicans, mainly. Democrats are egregious in plenty of ways, but this has been a goal of Republicans going back years and years. In fact, Texas Governor Rick Perry, when he was running for president, had that famous moment where he was talking about the departments of government he was going to cut, and one of them was Department of Education, because we don't like being told we're racist. We want to just be racist and not have anyone mention it. Is that too much to ask? Is that too much to ask? Can I just be racist without people raising a whole thing about it? But if no one knows how much racism is going on, then everything is fine. You see? Don't worry your little head about it. Everything I just said for the past 3 minutes was a Martin Luther King Jr. speech. He was a big fan of just, if we get rid of the data, everybody's cool. Thank you, Ratso, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. School of the 1960s was profound. Narcs shaking down high school kids. The kids brought that to arrest. You mean the protests in the 1960s? Yes, that is true. Were profound. Um, so let's go back to this article for a minute. By the way, yeah, and Ratso, thanks again for supporting the show. Means a lot. I do not frown upon super chats. No, I don't. Without the ED, and yes, it is true, ED also stands for erectile dysfunction. I am about 75% certain that they're talking about education department. But you can read it either way. Whichever way you want to take it with your mind. Without erectile dysfunction, the federal government's capacity to collect data is eviscerated. That is so true, because it's the erectile dysfunction that is causing these government employees to have the time to go run the data. If their rods were working correctly, they're not going to be working on that data. So true. Okay, I'm done with this joke, and I'm going to move on. I'm probably not done with this joke. It's probably going to come back later, but for the moment, we're going to move on. Without the education department, the federal government's capacity to collect data is eviscerated, which is an essential resource for identifying and addressing disparities in education. That's everything I just said, so don't need to reread it. To enforce national student privacy laws is another one of the tasks, the missions, as douche AI says. Another one of the missions of ED is student privacy, enforcing student privacy. I missed. Let's see. I missed a super chat. It looks like from LXI. Sorry about that. Oh yeah, there it is. Thank you, Lexi. I am very sorry to miss the super chat. Lexi says, "You're dope. I've been watching your stuff for like a decade." Oh, that's so cool. You're one of the last real journalists left. Props to you and your awesome work. Too kind, Lexi. Love it, and thank you for supporting the show, and thank you for watching long. Thanks for being for watch long time. Really appreciate it, and I like the people who've been like the 10-year watchers, because if others ask them, if you wanna quiz the 10-year watchers, I have not changed my positions. Pretty much everything has stayed exactly the same, which is kind of something you should look for. I'm always amazed that like not just these YouTubers who have swung completely, done a 180. I went on Joe Rogan's podcast. I went on his podcast twice. We sat there for 3 hours. We agreed on, I'd say, 90% of things. And now, if I were to go on there, I'd say we disagree on 90% of things. How can you change that much and still have the same fan base? Aren't the people viewing go, oh, this guy's full of shit because he believes completely different things this year than he did last year? And I don't just mean independent media or whatever. I mean politicians, Tulsi Gabbard. Like, how do you not watch that and go, why would I believe anything these people say if it's a 180 from 3 years prior? I have stayed the same. Now, that also has made me one of the most suppressed comedian journalists in America. So I can see why. Why not move towards the money, right? Okay, so they enforce student privacy, which we don't need that. But here's another thing is like, I like to criticize the fact that Trump is doing something like removing the Department of Education. That is a bad thing. But I also would like to point out where people are overstating it. Privacy laws for students in America were already pretty gutted. Like, children are being surveilled by the NSA as much as all of us. Everything Edward Snowden revealed has not changed. They're being surveilled. Their privacy is destroyed. So it's like, to pretend that the Department of Education has done an amazing job of defending their privacy is bullshit. Under Democrats, under Republicans, doesn't matter. All right, I'm going to completely run out of time. So let me move on and just say that the main reason for removing the Department of Education, there's two reasons. One is the rich in America want as many private schools as possible, because private schools means they can make more money from it, right? That's what private schools are. They enrich the rich. So It's a way of destroying, again, the public infrastructure, public schools. You also defund the public schools, which forces those people who barely have enough money, who can barely afford it, to push their kids into private schools. Like, I went to public school, even though I grew up middle class, because public schools were good enough to get an education. But you got them and you got them and you got them. And eventually those middle class people who can barely afford it start putting kids in private schools because they believe there's no other option. So that's one of the reasons. The other is because they want to make racism great again. I mean, it really has been such a bummer to be a racist over the past few years when sometimes you get a little light criticism. It's not even like racism ended. This is a racist society, top to bottom. Racism was not over during the Biden years. Systemic racism was still as big, if not bigger, than it was before. And yet, that's not enough. Trump and his goons are like, can we just make racism great again, please? Because it's every once in a while, someone would like hold up a little Black Lives Matter sign, and that hurt my little snowflake heart. Okay. I should not have waited. Well, I should not have let us get to the 45-minute mark without getting to the next topic. But here we are. I want to move on to Israel. This is from Chris Hedges, always doing excellent writing. Right now he's talking about the genocide in Gaza. And this latest post is called The Last Chapter of Genocide. And I want to read a little bit of it and discuss. Also, I'm going to bring in a few minutes. We're witnessing Israel's end game. I'd love to say we're witnessing the end of Israel. That may take a little longer, but we now know their end game, and I'm going to get in a few minutes to the end game of Greater Israel. But this is from Hedges. This is the last chapter of the genocide. It's the final blood-soaked push to drive the Palestinians from Gaza. No food, no medicine, no shelter, no clean water, no electricity. Israel is swiftly turning Gaza into a Dante-esque cauldron of human misery, where Palestinians are being killed in their hundreds and soon again in their thousands and tens of thousands, or they will be forced out, never to return. Now, I do have one issue with that paragraph. Dante-esque is spelled Dantesque, which looks like Dantesque. And Chris, I am sorry. I really believe it should be Dante-esque. I don't know what the accurate word. I don't know if Dantesque is a word, but I am fully and firmly in the Dante-esque camp. Okay, so I don't know what's going on with the Dantesque stuff. I don't know who the Dantesques are. I don't know what they're up to. It seems wrong. It seems I feel betrayed. Now, what's going on right now is I am attacking the word Dantesque because I don't want to think about everything else in that paragraph. See, that's what you do. It's called distraction. When you don't want to think about the fact that Israel's committing a genocide and killing hundreds of thousands and cutting off their food and water and killing children, you get upset about the spelling of a word. You see what I did there? That's wonderful. This final chapter, Hedges writes, marks the end of Israeli lies. The lie of the two-state solution. The lie that Israel respects the laws of war that protect civilians. Yeah, right. The lie that Israel bombs hospitals and schools only because they are used as staging areas for Hamas. Yeah, right. Bullshit. And your mainstream media has tried to continue that lie to say, oh, they were aiming for a Hamas fighter. And yeah, I probably overdo this point. I mean, I say it so often, but I like to play the even if game. Even if there'd been a Hamas fighter in that hospital, you cannot blow up the hospital. Even if there'd been a control center, Hamas control center under the hospital, you cannot blow up that hospital. It would be like a school shooter going into a school and you blowing up the school. It is utterly unhinged and insane. Even if, play the even if game with your friends. When they want to argue with you that this genocide is fine, that it's acceptable, that it's okay, play the even if game. I find the even if game is a better one, a better way to get into the debate than to play the I know for certainty there was never a Hamas fighter in a hospital. Maybe there was one time. Even if you can't blow up the hospital, then you are beyond anything Hamas could have ever done. You blew up a fucking hospital. You absolute pieces of shit. To continue from Hedges, the lie that Hamas uses civilians as human shields while Israel routinely forces captive Palestinians to enter potentially booby-trapped tunnels and buildings ahead of Israeli troops. I did a full segment on that recently. Thank you, Atomic Toaster, for the donation for supporting this show. Goddamn, yes, 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 yes. Sorry, I just thought I should overdo that one. Atomic Toaster says, hello, fellow gamers. Elon Musk here. I'm happy to announce we will now pay ex-content creators in Tesla stocks. Go premium. Thank you so much for supporting the show. I would just like to reiterate, I do not frown upon super chats. I don't know why that became my motto, but it's stuck now. It's here. But yes, I did a segment on this, a longer segment on that the other day about Israel's use of human shields. Like, it has been proven. There are IDF soldiers who have admitted that it's not a rarity. It is every battalion has human shields, Palestinians that they send into buildings to die, to find if there's bombs. Like, that, human shields is the norm for Israeli troops. The lie that Hamas or Palestine Islamic Jihad, PIJ, are responsible. The charge often being errant Palestinian rockets for the destruction of hospitals, United Nations buildings, or mass Palestinian casualties. Oh, yeah, you remember that? They tried that at the beginning of the genocide, like the first month when Israel struck a hospital. They tried to say, oh, no, that was Hamas tried to fire a rocket, and it accidentally curved around and hit back on its own location, and so Hamas blew up their own hospital by accident. You remember when they tried to pull that in the first month? But the problem was, if you're going to pull that lie, you can't then blow up dozens of other hospitals in Gaza. Because after the first couple ones, people are going to stop believing it was an accident by Hamas, which people were able to prove that even that first one was not an accident by Hamas. But utter lies, utter lies. The lie that humanitarian aid to Gaza is blocked because Hamas is hijacking the trucks or smuggling the weapons and the war material. The lie that Israeli babies were beheaded, which we know was bullshit, because there were only 2 babies on Israel's official report. Even Israel admits this. Only 2 babies died on October 7th. Okay? 2. And they were not beheaded. It was, both of them were in firefight exchanges. And, you know, who knows who shot what. We do know the IDF killed hundreds of Israelis. The lie that 75% of the tens of thousands killed in Gaza were Hamas terrorists. The lie that Hamas, because it was allegedly rearming and recruiting new fighters, is responsible for the breakdown of the ceasefire. Israel never actually abided by the ceasefire, not all of the rules. They never allowed in the full amount of aid, and then they cut off aid completely, that was what they agreed with the ceasefire. What comes now is mass starvation. The UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, for Palestine said on March 21st, it has 6 days of flour supplies left. Deaths from diseases caused by contaminated water and food. Scores of killed and wounded each day under the relentless assault of bombs, missiles, shells, bullets. Nothing will function. Bakeries, water treatment, sewage plants, everything. Israel has just blown up another hospital. Less than half of 53 emergency vehicles operated by the Red Crescent are functional. Israel's message is unequivocal. Gaza will be uninhabitable, leave or die, but at the same time, they won't let them leave. So it's leave or die, but we have you imprisoned there. It'd be like the U.S. government shooting and bombing Rikers Island on a daily basis, yet making sure that the prisoners remain imprisoned there. Israel habitually signs agreements. This is moving on to how they violated the ceasefire, which I just mentioned some of. And they also killed 137 people during the ceasefire, which doesn't sound like much of a ceasefire, does it? Israel habitually signs agreements, including the Camp David Accords and the Oslo Peace Agreement, with timetables and phases. It gets what it wants, in this case, the release of the hostages in the first phase, and then violates subsequent phases. This pattern has never been broken. Israel does this again and again and again. Israel refused to honor the second phase of the deal. It blocked humanitarian aid for 2 weeks, violating the agreement. It also killed at least 37 Palestinians during the ceasefire. 3 of them were journalists when Israeli drones attacked a relief team in northern Gaza. The Trump White House is cheering the slaughter. Israel's genocidal. What did I just do? That was weird. Wow, it's not even letting me. Okay, I have completely blanked out this. Give me a second to find this again. Oh, sorry, guys. That was weird. I don't know why it wasn't in my... I don't know why it wasn't in my recently closed columns page. I mean, we recently closed tabs. All right. Where were we? We're clearly going to go well over the hour in this episode, but that's all right. We're in it to win it, and these are important topics. Yeah, they refused to honor the agreement. Trump is cheering it on. Israel's genocidal assault on Gaza is the inevitable denouement of its settler colonial project and apartheid state, the seizure of all of historic Palestine, with the West Bank soon, I expect, to be annexed by Israel, and displacement of all Palestinians has always been the Zionist goal. So, speaking of that, let me go to Kit Klarenberg's article. So that speaks to Greater Israel, the idea of stealing, of course, Gaza, the West Bank, and parts of Syria, parts of Lebanon. And Kit Klarenberg has an article up at Mint Press about the conspiracy theory is now fact of Greater Israel. Ever since Tel Aviv's 1948 creation, which has been said and written about Greater Israel, much has been said and written about Greater Israel. The notion Zionism's ultimate end goal is the forcible annexation and ethnic cleansing of vast swaths of Arab lands for Jewish settlement based on biblical claims that this area was promised by God. The media typically dismisses this concept as an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, or at most a fringe fantasy of a minuscule handful of Israelis. But we're now learning that it is no minuscule handful of Israelis that believe in Greater Israel, which is also on a patch on many of the soldiers' shoulders, Greater Israel. The Guardian admitted in 2009 the idea of a Greater Israel has long appealed to religious and secular right-wing nationalists alike in Tel Aviv. They have the shared objective of seeking to fulfill divine commandments and about the beginning of redemption, as well as create facts on the ground to enhance Israel's security. The outlet acknowledged this motivation was a key contemporary driving force in mainstream Israeli politics, which effectively turned the Palestinians into aliens on their own soil. So that's even The Guardian back in 2009 admitting that there was a big push for Greater Israel, to have all of this land stolen. Gaza, West Bank, parts of Syria, parts of Lebanon, parts of Jordan. The Nation has described the push to establish Greater Israel as a central ideological goal of Netanyahu's Likud party. The Syrian government's fall has raised questions, concerns, and uncertainties locally and internationally. Can the country survive in its present form? And let's remember that Syria's fall was manifested by U.S. and Israel. And you can say one and mean both because they are one and the same. The U.S. and Israel, there may be debates as to whether the U.S. is a feudal empire to Israel or whether Israel is a feudal state to the United States. But either way, whichever one is sucking off the other, I think they're sucking off each other. And by the way, you can make that sound dirty simply by changing the tone in your voice. Like if they're a parasite sucking off the United States, that doesn't sound as bad as they're a parasite sucking off the United States. Now that sounds very dirty. All you got to do is change the tone. Makes a world of difference. Can the country survive in its present form? Syria, will Western-backed. Did I even complete my sentence about U.S. and Israel are the ones who manifested the fall of Syria in order to facilitate Israel taking large swaths of Syria? The U.S. had already taken the oil fields of Syria, about a third of Syria. That happened years ago. And Israel is now taking more of Syria. So Israel and the United States funded, armed, facilitated Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, ISIS even in sometimes to take over Syria. And now those groups, for some reason, you'd think groups that would despise Israel have no interest in attacking Israel. Isn't that funny? ISIS, Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, they're essentially never attacking Israelis. Isn't that strange? I wonder why that is. Will Western-backed former ultra-extremists be able to run a government in Syria? Question mark. Could the Iran-led axis of resistance, which inflicted serious harm to Israel and its Western allies through 2023 and 24, be under threat? The list goes on. But one thing is sure, Israel is seeking to profit handsomely from the chaos. Assad's fall has sparked a Syrian military withdrawal from the area, and in turn, the IDF is moving in. Netanyahu announced that orders had been given for the IDF to push deep into the demilitarized zone created by their agreement with Syria, which is legally and historically Syrian territory. He claimed this was merely a temporary defensive position. How many of you think Israel is going to take part of Syria as a defensive position and then give it back? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? He claimed there was a temporary defensive position, yet ever since it has become increasingly unambiguous that for Israel, Assad's departure not only greenlights the tearing up of long-standing agreements, but the entire map of the Middle East as we know it. The IDF has captured strategically invaluable Mount Hermon, Syria's tallest mountain, from which Damascus can be seen 40 miles away. Concurrently, hundreds of Israeli airstrikes have obliterated what remained of Syria's military. Yeah, not a lot was made of that in the Western media, but basically after Syria fell, Israel blew up their entire military. And the new leader of Syria, the former al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, HTS, he said it was fine. In an interview, they were like, "Are you concerned that Israel just blew up all of Syria's military?" And he's like, no, it's not a big deal. Israeli media has undergone a significant tonal shift. Historically, Israeli media had framed the state's actions, ranging from operations against neighboring countries to settlement expansion, in terms of security and defense. In the days leading up to Tel Aviv's invasion of Lebanon in 2024, the Jerusalem Post published a strikingly candid explainer guide for its readers, asking, is Lebanon part of Israel's promised territory? So you're seeing this shift in Israeli media, where they used to say, oh, this is defensive. Oh, we're fighting. We're fighting for our security. And that has now shifted to, look, we own these parts of these other countries. Is this Israeli territory? Now, guess what? Zero is Israeli territory, all right? Like, if you look at the maps, it used to be mandatory Palestine is what it was called. If you go back before 1948. Then 33 nations in the UN voted to create Israel. And that UN map from 1948 has now been enlarged, and Israel has stolen loads more land. They've almost doubled their land that they had back then. The Post leaned on a Brooklyn-based rabbi to graciously explain in detail how, based on multiple passages in Jewish scripture, Lebanon is within the borders of Israel, which, of course, is idiocy, because the word Israel, you will see it a lot in Jewish prayers. You'll see it if you were to go to a synagogue right now, you'd probably hear the word Israel multiple times in whatever passages from the Torah they're reading. But Israel, the word Israel means multiple things. Sometimes it means God. Sometimes it means the people that the people that wrestle with God. Now, the reason it means wrestle as in debate, as in, the Jews going back hundreds of years were always arguing and debating, and this tradition goes on inside rabbinical circles, inside a lot of Hasidic groups, always arguing and debating about scripture, about ethics, what have you, philosophy, Jewish philosophy, all those things. And so they were called the people who wrestle with God because they were always discussing these things. That term was then used to describe this nation state that the UN created in 1948. But when you read the word Israel in scriptures from hundreds of years ago, it has nothing to do with the current nation state of Israel. Even today, when you go to a synagogue and they're reading prayers and it says this, Israel, Israel, they are not, the idiots think that they're talking about the nation, the current nation state of Israel. They are not. That is not what those scriptures mean. And they were written hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So how is it that they could possibly be talking about that? But yeah. And so really, I know most of you haven't been in a synagogue, but you will hear them say a lot, the people of Israel, the people of Israel. That means the people who wrestle with God. That is why they keep saying it. But of course, here's the thing, is a lot of rabbis probably know this. They probably know that's the real meaning. I mean, I bet almost all of them do. But they want to keep indoctrinating people into believing that Israel is some sort of promised land to the Jews writ large. And so therefore, they don't tell their congregations that when they read the people of Israel, it doesn't mean the people of that nation state. Anyway, on December 4th, 4 days before the Syrian government's fall, the Times of Israel published an op-ed on how Israel's exploding population urgently required Lebensraum. Now, I didn't know this, but people who are smarter about World War II than I am, or smarter about German, maybe. Lebensraum is a notorious German concept that was used prior and during World War II, meaning living room. Hence the Raum, room. Lebensraum meant we need more room for living. And it was typically associated with the Nazis. It was a Nazi concept of like, we need to, for example, annex Austria because we need more Lebensraum. It's kind of like U.S. Manifest Destiny, pretty similar. Here you have Israel using the Nazi term for taking over land in their own articles. How disgusting can they get? The piece noted that Israel's population was projected to grow to 15 million by 2048. Tel Aviv's territory rapidly needed to be expanded. By the way, the title of that article saying Lebensraum was changed after some people, for some reason, got upset. Thank you, Ratso, for donating, supporting the show. Really appreciate it. Point to be made, I do not frown upon Super Chats. If anybody would like Super Chat. By the way, you can support this show anytime, whether you're watching this live or you're watching this some other time. There's a little button on YouTube. It's a heart with a $sign, or you can throw in a thanks or whatever and support this show. The best way, though, to support this show is to become a member at leecamp.net. That's my locals page, leecamp.net. And when you join up there, it's a whopping $6. Wow, I can't speak. I did have dental work done, though. So a whopping $6 a month. So, I know it'll just break the bank. If you count Unredacted tonight, that means it's 38 cents an episode, 3 live streams and 1 Unredacted tonight a week, 38 cents for every time I put out an episode. And you support this show. You also get my ebook. You get lots of cool shit. You get extra segments. And that's the best way to do it. Another way to do it is patreon.com/LeeCamp. And I also wanted to let you guys know that I have recently, in the past 2 months, started a Substack for my written columns. I'm putting out roughly 1 written column a week that's based on the Unredacted Tonight segments. So if you prefer the written columns, sometimes people prefer to share written columns. They're easier to share than videos, etc. Substack.com/@RealLeeCamp. I know that's not as confusing as just more confusing than just my name, but It was the only one available at the time. I have not added this into the banners. I should do that. Substack.com/ at real Lee Camp. That's the at symbol. So there it is. Substack.com/ at real Lee Camp. If you prefer Substack, that is where to find me. And I'd love for you to join up there as well. If you join up in the free membership, you get pretty much almost everything. So you can obviously join up for the paid membership as well if you prefer and want to help the show. Okay, let me keep going here. Since the collapse of Assad's government, the phrase Greater Israel has reemerged in Israeli media. They're also, of course, going after Lebanon. This is geopolitical analyst Sharmeen Narwani said the good news is Israel has completely dropped all its masks. Where was, oh yeah. All its masks. The bad news is it will go for land grabs everywhere, but this will be done opportunistically and without much forethought or strategic planning. In the end, which country besides the U.S. will be able to support Israel publicly? Tel Aviv will corner itself because the dominant Western discourse and EU law are still premised on human rights and rules. Allowing Israel these land grabs will also sink the Western-led global order. And here is Roger Waters talking about, friend of the show, Roger Waters, talking about Israel, the masks coming off.
The mask is off, Western imperialism, finally. At the end of the Second World War, we all stood around and declared universal human rights for everybody, supported, we hoped, by a kind of universally accepted international law and the Geneva Conventions and all of that. All right, well, we now know for absolute certain that a lot of our leaders, they were lying, and they knew they were lying. They have no intention of honoring the idea that all men are created equal and have certain inalienable rights. They do not believe that, and they never did. What I'm hoping is that the genocide of the Palestinian people will prove to be the Achilles heel in the monster of the Western hegemony with its mask off. They're all in it together, and they've all said, actually, we didn't mean all that. We believe in empire and hegemony. And we believe that the world is a big cake and it needs to be plundered by Europeans. If you're not like us, we will steal every stick of furniture you've got. That is what the Israelis, who are mainly from Northern Europe or North America, are doing now to the indigenous population of the Holy Land, of Palestine.
Yeah, well said by Roger Waters. And, you know, he's one of the guys that has been beating this drum for a long time, even at risk to his own career. He is so big, luckily, that they haven't been able to harm him much, but they succeeded. This is well before October 7th. They succeeded at getting the major sponsor of his tour, and his tours are massive, right? These are stadiums and arenas and stuff. So to have, and I don't remember whether the major sponsor was Bank of America or Citibank or what it was, but to have one of the major sponsors with the people that facilitated and allow people to get paid and everything in a store, in a tour that is already set up and is that large, is a major, because you then have to run around finding a new sponsor that's going to foot the bill for millions and millions of dollars. It's not an easy thing. And they successfully, accusing him of being anti-Semitic, successfully got his major sponsors to pull out of his show. So he's been fighting this fight no matter how much it damages or makes his life difficult for a long time. So always impressive from him. But okay, just a little bit more of this on Greater Israel. Donald Trump has, of course, talked about cleaning out all of Gaza on top of emptying Gaza of Palestinians for settlement, forcing countless people in the Sinai. That's their goal, would be Israel wants to send all the Gazans into the Sinai, and Egypt would inevitably create mass chaos and tensions. and provide the excuse for Tel Aviv to militarily occupy the region in the manner of the West Bank, just as temporary defense position until a suitable arrangement is found. Those type of bullshit lines. Haaretz observed Netanyahu was angling for a legacy as the leader who expanded Israel's borders and wants to be remembered as the one who created Greater Israel. This is basically Netanyahu. He wants to go down in history. I mean, he's an oldish man, probably doesn't have tons of functional years left, and he wants to go down in history as the one who took, like doubled Israel's size by stealing Syria, Gaza, West Bank, Jordan, parts of Egypt, parts of Lebanon. Tel Aviv faces a panoply of intractable internal problems. Contrary to claims of Tel Aviv's population exploding, tens of thousands of residents are routinely fleeing due to ongoing attacks on Israel. At the same time, its economy has perhaps permanently been relegated to the doldrums, the country dependent on U.S. largesse to endure. And I've covered that a lot as well. Israel's economy is collapsing. And honestly, it would have collapsed if the U.S. weren't funding it. Basically, the only thing keeping Israel afloat is the U.S. And outside of that, you've got 65,000 Israeli businesses have gone bankrupt since October 7th. And that's by Israel's own doing. They despite the destruction of their own economy, they want to continue their genocide. I mean, how remarkably repulsive. Just remarkably repulsive. Okay. I have gone way over, but it was worth it. Thank you guys so much. New Unredacted tonight comes out every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. And my next live stream is Wednesday at 8 p.m. We've moved that one to the late night live stream, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and then Friday back at 3 p.m. Eastern. So hope you watch all of those. If you haven't seen the first 5 episodes of Unredacted tonight, now's the time. It's at the top of linktree.com/Lee Camp. Where is that one? Somewhere over here. And I will see you later. Much love and solidarity. Keep fighting, everybody.
Well, brother, I salute you, though, man. You're one of the few that bring together this tremendous artistic talent and still be in such deep solidarity with oppressed people.
It's an honor to be here because I'll tell you, Lee, you have one of the funniest shows on television, bar none.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here. While I was waiting, I was leafing through your wonderful book.
Same to you. I love your show. Be happy to come back anytime.
Lee, this is one of the great honors of my long career, just to be in the same earth with you.
I'm sure.
We're just so blinded. We have so many blinders on because our society doesn't want us to know things. And so it takes shows like your show, and
it is clearly designed to eradicate.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you? Julian, thanks for joining me. Honor to have you, brother.
Consumerism is a theory that people should behave this way to help each other. It's not.
Mr. George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me in these dark times.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lee, for having me on. Keep fighting. Ha.